Good morning, everybody. It's really great to be here. Those lights are going to really blind me, but that's okay. I see a lot of smiling faces. You got your coffee? Good, good. Well, it's my pleasure to be here today to help navigate this panel and have these amazing panelists with me. And a lot of things are going on in Houston. My name is Jan Odegaard. I'm the executive director here at the ION. And largely my role here is just to help kind of make the flow go. They're going to get to self-introduce themselves here. I'm not going to mess up neither their name or their bio or their history and what they're doing. But there's a great panel we have here today assembled. And, you know, I've been sort of reflecting a little bit on the past 2 years, or 3 years almost now. I keep suppressing the fact that we've been almost at home for 3 years. But how has Houston kind of really moved forward in a big way? And I don't recognize the Houston we see today in tech and innovation compared to even 3 years ago, even 2 years ago. It's radically different. There's an optimism, there's an energy, there's an incredible amount of sort of innovation that goes on. And I really think that we're on a roll here, and I think we're kind of making the headway. Can we rest? No, because everybody else is running too. So we have to remember that. This is a marathon, but we actually need to occasionally sprint a little bit, and so let's continue doing that. But with no further ado, I'd like to get the panel introduced. So Michelle, I'm going to ask you to kind of introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're doing over at Methodist. So,
sure. Is it on? Okay. Welcome, everyone. So appreciative you all are joining us here. Michelle Stansberry. I'm the Vice President of Innovation and IT Applications at Houston Methodist. I've been there almost 30 years. Sometimes it's a little hard for me to actually say that, but it's been very rewarding. We've been doing a lot of great things, especially in the digital space. I want to remind everyone, innovation is not new to Houston Methodist. We have lots of clinical innovation with our research institute and many others going on, but I'm pretty much focused in on the digital health side. The digital health tech side, and we've had our Center for Innovation open for probably about 4 years now. It has been extremely successful with many types of innovations, and more recently, I will just tell you, because of the staffing challenges and the healthcare, we have done some unique things that have been able to help us in that area, but I'll save a little bit of that, kind of a little later on with the questions, but very appreciative to be able to hear and talk about some of the things we're doing at Houston Methodist and how we kind of co-collaborate with some other industries.
Juliana.
Okay, so I'm Juliana Garaiser. I'm the head of the Houston Incubator and the VP of Innovation for Greentown Labs. So a neighbor at the ION District. We are the biggest climate tech incubator in the US. We started 11 years ago as an initiative from 4 MIT entrepreneurs who grew their labs and rented a garage. And 11 years down the line, we have 3 buildings in Boston, 100,000 square feet. And we opened 2.5 years ago at the ION District, our 4th building. We've incubated 600 companies. We've raised more than $4 billion in 11 years. But in 1.5 years in Houston, we are at 80 companies, and we have raised $500 million. For Boston, it took them 6 years to get there. And that means that we really came to the right place at the right time, and we couldn't have done it without the help of the ION. It's very difficult for us to find a building with the characteristics that are required for Greentown Labs, because 2/3 of our space is prototyping space. In Boston, we also have a wet lab. And we need a kind of industrial look-like building. And of course, the Fiesta supermarket was vacated, and we thought this would be a great space. But this couldn't be possible without the help of our landlords and how flexible they've been and how supportive and how we've worked together. So this is my song for open innovation and for collaboration. I think if Houston is going to make it, it's because we have a very open spirit and we collaborate very well.
Thank you, Juliana. Steve.
Yeah, I'm Steve Rader. I'm at NASA's Center of Excellence for Collaborative Innovation. I'm the program manager there. And we are a center of excellence that works across NASA, as well as across the entire federal government. So we've been around for about 11 years and have access to about 50 different crowdsourcing platforms that represent about 200 million people worldwide. And we're one of the world leaders in running open innovation challenges and kind of finding the discovery mechanism and exercising that. We've done about 700 plus projects for the agency and the federal government. So it's an exciting time. We've been engaged with ION now, and our group is part of JSC's Front Door, which is trying to engage more in the new ecosystem of innovation that we're building here, and that ION is a hub for. So thanks for having us.
Thank you. So one of the conversations we had on our call was a little bit about open innovation, and you alluded to all of you actually alluded to that. And I recently had a trip to Eindhoven, and it was kind of in the Netherlands. And it's interesting because in the mid-90s, Philips Electronics was sort of that was the Philips Electronics town. In mid-90s, they announced 50,000 people are laid off. We're shutting down all of Eindhoven, and that was literally 1 of every 3 families in town lost a job. They rebooted themselves in a significant way, and it was the leadership of some of the top companies that said, we need to be and focus on open innovation. And we can't be secretive because we're not going to scale fast enough. We got to share. So tell me a little bit, and Juliana, maybe you could start with you. Tell me a little bit about how your approach to it. Why is it important to drive open innovation?
Well, I think, Greentown Labs, when it was created, they realized that the secret sauce to be able to bring climate tech innovation to the world was by being open and not attached to any specific company or university. There's a lot of research that has been done in energy tech, in all kinds of spaces in Houston, but a lot of it has been behind closed doors. So when we decided to come to Houston, one of the first things we wanted to do is being the Switzerland for everybody, for companies, for universities, for all kinds of corporates. And I believe that's the way, and in many cases, even Shell or Chevron were excited about being able to get into a lab without having to go through, in some cases, people at Shell cannot go through their own wet labs because it looks like Guantanamo. Same thing for people at Chevron. They have labs in California only, and they said, there will be so many workers here, staff that would be so interested in coming, engaging with the companies, but also even doing some of the things that you can do in prototyping and wet lab. All of the things that we've done with corporates, and now we have more than 90 corporates, has been not only to the corporates to engage with the startups, but in many cases, they start engaging among themselves. And from being competitive, suddenly they become collaborative, because the challenge at hand right now in the world is too big to compete. So a lot of them have decided, you know what, let's collaborate, because at this point, if we want to survive as a city, we need to make sure we work together.
Steve, you actually been living open innovation. How does it work at NASA?
Yeah, well, it turns out for us, we've started to realize that the pace of innovation change and just the sheer scope of how much technology development is going on worldwide. I put in my presentation all the time that people don't realize 90% of all scientists that have ever lived on planet Earth are alive today. That's how big the explosion in technology is. And so if you think you can do it all yourself, or you think you can go just find the newest technologies and the latest developments yourself, you're kidding yourself. It's just not possible. You can't Google the latest and greatest technologies. It doesn't work that way. And what we've found is open innovation, this idea of using prize challenges or using large crowds and using the statistics to act as a dragnet across all of the different industries and domains where there's technology development going on, is a magic pill. It works like nothing else. Now, it doesn't do the whole job. There's a lot of entrepreneurship to take those ideas and those technologies, put them together for solutions, but it is definitely a tool that is absolutely necessary and is showing its value just over and over as a money-saving technique for discovering those latest and greatest technologies and experts, which, by the way, that's the other part to that, is the experts are now harder to find and access.
I'm going to ask you, Michelle, to think about the same thing, but we talked a little bit before we came out here also about sort of the inbounds we're having to navigate, and we're constantly being pitched, I want to do a pilot, I want to do this, here's my technology. Maybe add that layer on to the open innovation strategy maybe that Methodist has.
Sure. It's, I would say from the open innovation that we have, I would tell you healthcare as a whole has not really been very good at probably sharing a lot of the things that we've been, of creating, but that's not the case these days, not with everything that we are doing overall in this digital space. We have hosted several other organizations down into our space to really learn about what we have done, especially now that we have our kind of technology hub. It's our R&D space that's there within the hospital. But, I will say yes, there is probably 20% of my emails are for companies trying to really wanting to come in and pitch to Houston Methodist. And, while probably your first reaction is, oh my gosh, it's just too much. I cannot even, how am I even going to think about this? But it's where, I'm telling you, out of that 25, you're probably 5%, you're going to find some that are really going to help you. And my problems that we have over at Houston Methodist are not the same problems that other healthcare organizations are having, or maybe some of them. But you can't close the door. I mean, if you do, then you're closing the door on potential opportunities. And so what we have tried to do is really, talk to these organizations, and if it's not a fit for us at this moment, we'll put them on a shelf, basically, until something does come up that potentially we'll use. Or the other organizations that we are collaborating with, we are very good about reaching out. Have you seen a company that'll do this or help with this problem? And it might not be something that we needed, but it may be something they did, and we'll make sure and share that with them so they'll have the opportunity. And so, that's where I say this open collaboration is, I'd say it's much more prevalent now. No one is holding back anything, because I will tell you, our Chief Innovation Officer will tell you, the secret sauce is not in finding the company. The secret sauce is in actually getting it, up and running in your own organization. And that's where we've done something extremely well at Houston Methodist.
Well, it's great to hear that there's things to share and lessons learned. So, in your minds, and maybe I want to hear from all of you here, and we'll start with Steve, what defines Houston as a great place for innovating? What's the unique? I mean, we're here today with 3 of our legs of the industry in Houston, but beyond that, I mean, we've bragged about that for a long time. We talked about that. The question is, what do we do and what makes it a great place for innovation?
Yeah, it's funny because the thing that makes Houston great is the same thing that makes open innovation really work, and that's diversity. Diversity of thought, diversity in the sources of who's working the problem is what open is about. The reason closed doesn't work is it's not enough. It's not enough people, it's not enough diversity in disciplines and thought. And so what Houston has is a huge population with people in multiple industries. We have a very diverse industry base. We used to be just oil and gas. Now we have a much bigger stake in other areas, especially medical, right? In space, right? I mean, so we're hopefully the cutting edge of, or we try to be the cutting edge of what's going on there. But just look at the space industry. It's exploded in and of itself, right? And a lot of that has offices now here in Houston. So I think part of this is we have the seed corn of what it takes to put together the ecosystems. And that's what we're really going to have the ecosystems of talent, the ecosystems of organizations and companies to actually kind of pull all of these pieces together and do all the way from discovery through development and implementation and realization.
Yeah. So I'm going to add, and I'm going to pass it to Juliana, but one of the things you need to do when you show up, how do you show up without your biases and sort of help believe? Because you have to be open-minded when you enter almost a room like this. It's like, well, there's energy industry here, there's space, there's health, but you have to be open-minded and sort of let your guard down. How do you work and how do you create an environment where that is actually easy?
You're asking me the diversity question?
I'm asking you that question, in addition to think about what is it about Houston that makes it a good place to innovate.
So I think, diversity for Houston, as mentioned, is key to who we are. But I think we need to go one step further and be inclusive, right? Now we are really good at finding diverse managers, diverse team players, but we need to see more diversity at the top. We need to have more representation. We need to make sure that everybody feels included and not tokenized. And we need to make sure that all of these people serve as inspiration to others, because underrepresented communities, they have lack of social capital and they have lack of inspirational capital. So we need to be very, very instrumental and very precise in terms of how to reach to those communities. We need to be intentional. It's not about, oh, I'm doing everything, I'm not preventing any access. Well, by you not stepping out of your comfort zone, not stepping out of your neighborhood, you're already preventing access because you're having your own biases, and you will keep on reaching people who look like you or who are in your networks. So that's why you have to have community partners like Supergirls Shine and many others, like Black Girls Who Engineer, to make sure that you reach to other networks that might not be in your normal circle, but just by doing that, you multiply the collisions, and the sky is the limit.
I appreciate that, and I've heard recently people say, it's not about you being welcome, it's about you belonging.
Totally.
I think that's a nuance that actually carries power. It's like, of course everybody's welcome, but you belong here. That's an important part in the DEI conversation. So Michelle, I'm certainly very excited about the partnership we are having with you, and in the context of innovation. So why did Methodist just to come here? Because it was not an obvious place necessarily for you, and in the context again of a place for innovation in Houston, and what does it take? What's unique? Did the role of that play into your decision to come to the ION and have a space here?
Well, it absolutely did. I mean, I will tell you, I mentioned it previously before, we have our own technology R&D space down in our own hospital, down at HMH in the medical center, and it has been extremely valuable for us in actually partnering with other organizations and showcasing some of the things that we're doing. But when we saw this space, and I will tell you, what was it, 2 years ago, Jan? Yeah, something like that. We came to tour the space before it was ever opened up, and we heard about what was supposed to be happening over here, and I'm going to tell you, I got so excited. I actually pulled Jan aside after the tour because the thing that excited me the most, one, it's industry agnostic here, right? It's not just about health. You got all types of industries here, but the type of talent that's going to be coming into this space, that was our goal. One, we wanted to be able to help showcase some of the things that we're doing at Houston Methodist, but absolutely come in here and talk about some of the problems that we're trying to solve, because it's not just health tech companies that are going to help us solve those problems. It's a lot of these other innovators that are going to be in this space that we want to give them some ideas of what we're trying to solve for healthcare, for our consumers, for our patients, and get them excited so that they're off going and developing something. And then they have a space to come back in and test whatever it is that they're trying to develop. And so that's what got us very excited about overall of this, this unique opportunity. And I will tell you, some of our greatest innovations that we've had, we found them from other industries, not from health tech companies. And I think that's the piece that everyone needs to understand, is that don't just look in your own industry to solve the problems that you're looking for, because guess what? You can learn cross-industry and things that'll come into your own organization to be able to help you from an innovative perspective for your customers, whoever they are.
I'm going to connect what Juliana said and what you just said, because I think you just reinforced what Juliana was talking about creating access, lowering the barrier, and actually getting out of your comfort zone, because we're very comfortable for you to stay within a hospital. Getting over here exposes you to very different opportunities, and it creates access to the people that we are bringing into this ecosystem, both at Greentown and here. It's like, oh my goodness, Methodist is over here. I can actually plug in. I have ideas about that, and I can learn about those problems. I think this is really kind of amplifying sort of the good place of innovation that Houston is becoming. So Steve, along the same lines, we just signed a SpaceX agreement with you. I know actually we've been on a round of sort of renewing and signing SpaceX agreement with almost all the academic institutions in the region. Why are those important? Why are those important instruments for NASA?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I mentioned, we're trying to kind of build a new ecosystem, right? And that's going to be some commercial space, it's going to be some traditional partners, and it's going to be a lot of new innovators. And what I find is every time I come to ION, I find a whole crowd of young innovators who have a spirit of, yes, this is possible. And even if they're not working on the right technology, just having a population of people that are trained on how to actually put businesses together and start to do something and connect with the VCs and the angel investors and the whole life cycle of business, I think is important. We're in a very different phase of organization and labor and talent right now. And the way those ecosystems are going to come together is not the traditional large company to large company agreements. It's going to be lots of players that are constantly changing. And so our agreement with ION is to try to come in here and tap into some of that, right? How do we discover those entrepreneurs that work, and how can we position them within our ecosystem? NASA has a ton of ways to work with them, right? We have SBIRs, we have grants, we have challenges, we have flight opportunities, all are funding opportunities, but they're really hard to use sometimes, and folks don't know about them. And so this gives us an opportunity to kind of fold some of the folks that are willing and able and have good ideas to connect with those opportunities so that then we can pull them through our traditional means and come up with new ways to start to enable them to work. Because I think it is this, how do we get the barriers of entry down, right? The barriers of entry for entrepreneurship have been too high for too long, and I think places like ION are the places that those start to come down and enable companies like NASA and like Methodist, like Green Lab, to all start connecting with this new community that's emerging, and not just connect with them, like help them grow, help encourage these new players to see that there is a future in being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think I knew, but I discovered in the process of doing that, is like, NASA has an incredible intellectual property portfolio. How many in the audience know that there's actually a mandate at NASA to commercialize that IP? There's ways in which you should commercialize that. And actually it's part of NASA's mandate is how do you activate all that intellectual property? Of course, it's obvious when you see it, because guess who funded it? We did. Our tax dollars funded that. So there's processes within NASA to actually activate that IP, and we need to figure out how we tap into that. We're right here. How do we work with that community? How do we work with Steve and others to actually figure out what is the IP portfolio that could be activated in energy transition, in the future of healthcare, in future endeavors to space? And that could be to solve problems going to space or here on Earth. So, So Juliana, you mentioned something interesting, reminded me of something interesting on the phone call we had. You said, you used the number 60%, maybe we can discuss the number, but let's say 60% of the technology that's going to be used to decarbonize the world is not yet invented. Why is that important, and why is that important to this group here, and tell me about that.
Well, a few things, right? A lot of people come to Greentown looking for answers. And I always tell them, it's not about how you get your next job or how you get your next gig. Nobody knows. So this is a huge leveling playing field, I have a lot of big companies now that are hiring, and they're coming to Greentown to say, like, hey, we need a new head of sustainability, or we need a new head of innovation. Can you help us? And the criteria, when I ask, what is the criteria for those roles, is like, it's about how fast you can learn and how fast you can teach. Nobody knows what is the best technology, the one that is going to be, the new oil. Is it hydrogen? Maybe. Is it, could be something else like geothermal? We don't know. And all of this is going to be by a lot of trial and error. And we will need to do that. And by that, we need to do a few things, being humble, but also being collaborative. So I think it's about putting yourself out there, showing that you can learn and showing that you can teach. And that's the way where we're going to really be able to solve this. It's normally taking 10 years for technologies to go from IP to commercialization. We don't have the luxury of time anymore. So at Greentown, what we're doing is working with 4 universities right now, hoping to have more, to bring technologies faster to Greentown. And we're working with a lot of corporations and with a lot of other key stakeholders like the City of Houston to make sure we can deploy those technologies faster because the market is demanding for them.
Do you see similar things in your journey to Mars in terms of the technology you need, in healthcare, any responses to that similar?
Well, I would just tell you, time is our enemy right now. I mean, I would say probably in any one of our industries, we know things that we need to get solved, and we need to solve them very quickly. Our whole motto within our digital tech is, we want to succeed fast or fail fast. I will tell you from a traditional IT perspective, everyone had this mentality of we have to get it to work. We have to make it work, however long it is that, it would take us to get there. Now it is, look, within, a few months, if it's not working and it's not meeting what we said, we put it in our rest in peace category is what we call it. But we've learned from it, and how do we take those learnings on to the next one? And I think that's the piece where kind of this cross collaboration, which I think is really going to be helpful, because if you stay in your silo, you're not thinking out of the box, not as much as you think you are. Because I guarantee you, I could probably tell Juliana or Steve, it's like, I'm going to give you a problem, and you're like, you'd probably come up with 2 or 3 ideas for me on the best way on how to solve that. And that's where I think it is, where you're talking about really being open and step out of your comfort zone, because you'll be amazed when you do that, the things that'll come your way.
So, it's very easy to talk about collaboration and working together. I have to admit that, but what is it going to take for all the people out in the audience here to really let their guard down and actually engage? Because Pumps and Pipes, wonderful as it is, and I'm really proud of Houston sort of taking the lead on this one and really pushing the frontiers, but ultimately it has to be more than this one event. How do we make it so that this is something that happens every day across the industries? Because guess what? As soon as we leave here, what are y'all going to do? Your head's going to go right into your inbox. It's going to be flooded with the things you do. So any advice to the group here, how they actually even organize down to their day? It's like, I need to make one phone call to a cross-industry partner every day. Or what should people do? How should you behave? I'm putting you on the spot here. So anyone want to take that up?
I would hate to be a CEO right now. I will tell you that. This is the most disruptive time ever. And I think the thing that has made organizations money and has been their bedrock is the thing that is going to sink them. Because you've been successful. And it's really hard to walk away from being successful. And I see this all the time. Companies need to figure out a way to be ambidextrous, to manage the competing priorities of making money and executing what's worked for you forever, and investing in the future, and serious investment in the future, in trying to find that strategic investment that's going to actually keep you from the ruin. If you look at the average age of the most successful Fortune 500 companies, it has gone from 90 years in 1930, and it's down to 14 years now. Disruption is coming for you. It may come tomorrow, it may be 5 years, it may be 10 years, but it's coming. And if you don't have a way to reach across industries, then you're going to be behind. I always talk about the disruption we know and the disruption we don't know. The disruption we know is digital. If you're not finished with your digital transformation, you're on the chopping block. If you don't have native AI factories in the works, you're probably on the chopping block. The disruption you don't know is all of the industries that is developing technologies based on 3D printing and machine learning and open APIs and CRISPR and all of these kind of toolkit things that work across every industry. And they're building solutions that are going to pop over and disrupt you at some point. And so what are you doing to surveil that? What are you doing to take advantage of that? What are you doing to open your work? And if you're not open, then you're totally closed off to all of that kind of opportunity. So that was kind of preachy. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay, because you kind of answered another question I had, because I had a question about the risk. We've come a long way, but what's our risk as Houston as an ecosystem? And I think you really spoke to that. Juliana, you're seeing some of this, and maybe Michelle afterwards?
Yeah, I always say the same thing to my team. Your network is your net worth, okay? This is something that comes to you wherever you go in your career, in your entrepreneurial journey. It's clear, you know, all the jobs that I got, all the opportunities that I had is because I helped someone. I always went with this service mindset, not in any time expecting anything in return. And I always say to my team, whoever comes to Greentown, you can help and they can help you. So what you just need to figure out what that is. And sometimes it might not be even related to climate tech. But just know that, you know, when they come to Greentown, I feel like, you know, you're the first step. You are like a triage doctor at the ER or a quarterback, you know. There's always someone coming with a problem, and they're going to tell you where they are. And maybe you, personally, are not able to answer that problem, but there's surely someone else you might introduce them to that can help them figure it out. So this is key, and it always, always pays back, always. So in many cases, I know that people have a very structured way of network. They study the room, they know, and they only talk to the people they think they have something to gain from. Well, this is not the best way to network. Network with an attitude of service, and it will always come back tenfold.
Yeah, I just want to kind of add to, you know, kind of both of what, you know, disruption is happening across all of our industries. I mean, it is not just healthcare, and it's not just space. It's all of the industries that are out here. And, you know, for us, I mean, 4 years ago when we created kind of our Center for Innovation, really focused on digital tech, it was really, we said, were we going to be disrupted, or were we going to disrupt ourselves? And as painful as it has been, we decided the best thing we needed to do was disrupt ourselves. And I will tell you that has proliferated out throughout our organization. Some of the innovations, you know, have been challenging, because I will tell you some of the staff have been like, whoa, what are you doing? It's, you know, this, I don't understand. Eventually they do, but it's what I would tell, you know, anybody, and I'm not saying anything new, but if you don't do it, I mean, we took a look at Always. Look at the taxis. They're not still around. Uber's like, or Lyft has taken all of them. Blockbuster's not here. And I guarantee you, at some point, they were thinking to themselves, it won't happen to us. Look at the amount of business that we have. And the same thing will happen. And it is getting out there and really looking and finding out ways that you can disrupt your own company and disrupt yourselves to make it better.
So one of the things I use, if you have had a tour with me through the building here, one of the things I remind people of is like, we're in this building in this particular time today because a company that used to operate here didn't want to disrupt itself. Sears saw Amazon come. They could have done Amazon 20 years before Amazon was created. They were a catalog business. They had the shipping and all the infrastructure ready. They could have just like, no, we're going online. It's not too expensive to print. We could go online with a catalog, and they would have actually been Amazon of today. They didn't want to disrupt that. We've become brick and mortar. They were so focused on who they were at the time, not what they could become. And it's really important to remember that. And I think as an industry in Houston here is really important because we are a heavy asset, incumbent industry focused. Well, we can be disrupted. We better do it ourselves. So I'm going to close with one question to all of you, and go down the line here and maybe start with Steve. What's been your industry's most magical innovation moment in this past year?
Yeah, I knew this was coming. The Artemis mission going on right now, we're very proud of. That's been 10, 15 years in the making. I worked on the communications architecture for that early on, and I'm looking for it to splash down just this week. So it's a very exciting time. But there's just so much going on in the space world. I'll just give you an anecdote. Just within our organization, we just ran a challenge with John Mather, who's the Nobel Prize-winning astrophysicist, to design a star shade that's like a kilometer. It's like huge, to deploy out into space so that you can detect planets better. And we did that with a challenge that cost us $10,000, and it got us 50 different designs. and got us started on that path. It's that kind of thing that gets me excited, because we're now getting the buy-in in the organization to get big players like Nobel Prize winners to understanding what open can bring to the table and understand how it can take them and help you on that journey all the way to implementation. So lots and lots of these stories, but I don't want to take all the time.
Juliana.
So we got a grant from JP Morgan to increase diversity for Greentown Labs. And we put it to good use, and we created an event called Access to Success. It was the first speech event for underrepresented founders. And let me tell you, they needed a lot of extra help, a lot more coaching. Finally, we got a cash award that came at the last moment, and we got amazing investors who committed not only to give more cash for the following year, but also to train those entrepreneurs who needed extra help for their pitches. And fast forward, and the Climate Tech Summit, 2nd of November, we announced our new accelerator program for underrepresented founders. We're accepting applications now, and the program will start in February, and we're still looking for more sponsors, so just pitching there.
Thank you.
So I've got two that I'm just going to kind of talk about, and the first one will lead into the second one. But one, I am extremely proud to work for a great organization when we were going through the pandemic and COVID. All of our staff and organization really put their heart and soul into making sure that, we were taken care of overall with the public, and just the amount of effort in that. So, very thankful. But I will tell you, you all have heard about the mass exodus out of healthcare. And most healthcare organizations are really suffering from staffing challenges from a nursing perspective. And so I will tell you, and you will hear everyone talk about, when you start to have sort of downturn and things start to happen, your traditional ways that you would kind of handle that wasn't going to work. And we knew that because there wasn't a bunch of nurses out there waiting for us to be able to hire them out there. And so we had created a virtual command center that we used quite a bit, staffed with clinicians during COVID and being able to take care of patients. And so the thought process came, why can't we create virtual nursing? Which is then, we don't have to have as much staff up on the floors to be able to take care. And we've started with admit and discharges. It has been phenomenal. And, now we're trying to roll that out across our organization, but it's also sparked other ideas of how else can we use that virtual command center to be able to help. And, the questions came, well, what did the nurses and the patients think about it? HCAHPS scores have raised really high. Nurses now have embraced it because they're not having to spend the time going into room trying to do this function by still, interrupted, having to go and take care of other patients. So, it just goes to show you, think out of the box on ways that you're trying to solve problems and what you can potentially do.
That's a good way of ending. And Houston, if anything, we know command centers. NASA has a flight center. Almost every energy company has a command center. And now the healthcare industry in Houston have command centers. I think that just shows how we are learning from each other and kind of leveraging that. And I think that it could be some real interesting collaboration around that. How do you make those even more effective and. So it's been a pleasure to have you here, Steve, Juliana, and Michelle. One of the things that I think your opportunity today here with this program is really to make sure that you come over here and you make sure you talk to just people from the other industry. You talk to if you're in healthcare, you talk to healthcare every day. Talk to people from the energy industry. Talk to people from the NASA and the space industry, because that's where the value comes for the conference and the convening like this. It's really about reaching outside your own comfort zone and having ideas like that. So it's really make a commitment to yourself. I'm going to collect business cards, if you still do that, or LinkedIn profiles of people from the other industry, because that's where the value ultimately is coming from. So with that, thank you so much for participating here, and I really appreciate this morning, and good luck with the rest of the conference. Looking forward to network more. Thank you.